Started the business over 35 years ago. A lot has changed over the years, but one thing still remains the same.
Our passion for fixing cars. With a team of over 12 men and women, they work day in and day out to provide us the best quality service possible.
From light and heavy duty vehicle repairs and maintenance work,
diagnostics and racing transmissions,
performance parts and Jeep upgrades,
automotive detailing,
used car sales,
and towing through our sister company, AC Towing.
Our team has the knowledge and understanding to solve all your vehicle needs while putting your mind at ease.
Experience the Ogilvie difference.
It's worth the drive.
Hello, and welcome back to the Bracket Life broadcast. Andrew, how are we doing tonight?
Well, glad to be back. Glad to be back after missing the big episode a couple weeks back there. So,
yeah, you did miss it. It was good, though. I don't know if you got a chance to watch back. We haven't talked about it, honestly, since then. We've had a lot going on.
There's been a ton going on. I did get to listen to it. I caught the tail end as I was leaving the meeting I was in and then rewatched it on the way home. So, good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't looking for the compliment there. It just kind of worked out. I happened to be fishing for one, That's life. That's all right. So tonight's episode, sponsored by Ogilvie's Auto and Fleet Service located in Jasper, Ontario. If you watched the commercial, you figured it out. Place is pretty cool. It's an awesome spot. If you've never been there, just checking it out. Like, Mike's worked really hard to make it an event when you roll in, if that makes sense. So like you have to go there to understand what I'm saying. So yes, Jasper, Ontario. I'll be there this weekend if anyone wants to come hang out. Family Day this weekend.
There you go.
Up. So
that's right.
If you're bored, come for a drive. So Ogilvie's Auto and Fleet Service not only fix all light and heavy duty vehicles, they also deal for FCI Performance, Jones Transmission Pumps, K&R Performance Engineering, Portatree, and Race Star Wheels, which is a new one. We just got set up with Race Star.
Yeah, I heard about that 2 weeks ago, actually. That was a good deal.
Absolutely. So that's all set up. Some awesome stuff. I'm really excited to see everything that kind of comes out of it. I haven't paid attention a whole lot to the Race Star stuff yet, but I think pretty sure it's a family-owned deal. That's a father that makes it, and his daughter kind of, I guess, runs the business now. So it's cool. We met them at PRI. Mike did. Visit the website, ogilviesauto.com. More information. Shoot me a message. That's a lot of people for like ordering and things like that. They just fire me off a message here on Facebook or figure out how to get my phone number or whatever, Or like I said, come visit us at the shop this weekend, just for fun. We'll be working on race cars. So
need a hand, stop off and help Brando too, right? So
That's right. I can always use some assistance, so that's all good. So we'll start off before, obviously, everybody's excited. I'm very excited. We got a top 25 list coming up tonight. We got to hit some details here first, but I'm really excited for it. I got the list right here. I'm wound up.
There you go.
So Canadian countdown for this week. We'll bring it back 2 weeks ago now. Feels like, I don't know if it feels like it was forever ago or if it was just recent. The Winter Rumble Practice Tree race. I kind of feels like both. We had an awesome turnout. We had a lot of fun as, about 140 entries in both races that we did. We were supposed to have 3, brought it down to 4 or 2 other way. Just for time restrictions and things like that. But it was a lot of fun. Did that first race, $1,000 to win. Dan Pepper took the win over Russ Adams. I didn't know who Dan was. Apparently, Dan is a practice tree race killer, or a practice tree killer is a better, I guess, way to say it.
Well, he's just good on the tree. Doesn't flat out. I don't think it makes any difference in the car, on a chair, in a banquet room, or on a drag strip. Right?
Yeah.
He can annihilate the ball.
Yeah,
and he's certainly now more aware of made everyone aware who he is across Ontario than he did going into the weekend, because he had a stellar run.
Oh yeah, no, it was awesome, and he was lights out for the most part in both races. So bringing us to the next one. So, like I said, instead of doing 3, we only did 2. So we combined this $5,000 and the last $1,000 race to make it $6,000 to win. That one, Dan Pepper was, I believe, still doubled at 16. Dan was doubled at 16 still.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Lost down. He ended up losing in the semifinals. So like I said, great day for Dan. The finals ended up being Brock Godmare, the Flying Frog, hitting up in the comments there. Anybody wants to talk to him, shoot him a comment. He's ready for you. So Brock took the win over Charlie Knopik for $6,000. Brock was triple entered at 8.
Yep. And
Double
doubled
entered at 4, and then singled in the finals. So he was all over it. Like Brock had a lights out race
main event
for the $6,000. Absolutely.
Yep.
And that was Brock's first big check win. So good for him.
Congrats.
Good for the boys. They had a drive too. Like they were like 7-8 hours driving down to get here. So like it was worth it.
Yeah, and they left that morning. They didn't come down the night before. Like there was a few of us who just decided to check out a little early from work and got in the day before to hang out. And those boys were just up.
I'm pretty sure they were on the road right around 4:30 in the morning. Come down, and then we had some slowdowns a little bit through it with the computer program and whatnot. But I think we ran that final right around 9.
Yeah, this doesn't sound wrong.
Give or take a little bit. But like that's a long day.
That's a long day to stay focused and do what was entailed to win, right? And to carry that many entries that far in the main event and do all that. That's
exactly
quite the thing to watch.
Yeah. So it was all cool. And then Brock there in the comments throws it out on the road 4:30. We did the bottom ball brawl, finished the night off. It was a lot of fun. I didn't know how much fun that would really be. Paul Garant wins over Daryl Jensen. Like that was wicked doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was really good. So that was a fun time.
There was some close racing there too. That wasn't really one of those, S show type of deals. It was some tight competitive racing that capped the night off. So it was a lot of fun.
It was good. And we had some folks that just hung out all day just for that. And then Paul was one of them. He was there right early in the morning and just waited for the whole day for that final event. He could have easily done very well in like the whole top ball deal with all of it, just doing what he did on the bottom.
100%.
Right? Was lights out.
100%.
Drew Buckner proved that. Drew was going off the bottom the whole time.
Yep.
Did very well. So whip through next. Couple updates from racing, or I guess mainly one. Sick week going on right now. Yep. Not necessarily bracket racing, but it's really cool.
Like bracket racing world is not far from starting, but right at the moment there isn't a lot going on in the world, and Sick Week is going on, and there is some Canadians down at the race. So you know what? I'm a fan of racing in general, right? So anything that has anything to do with it, I'm more a fan now of this drag and drive stuff than I ever thought I would be, right? There's a lot of technology there. It just is really cool if you're into the car aspect of our sport, right? But Dave Schroeder, who's a 2-time drag week champion, is down there. Unfortunately, his drag week came to an end on day 1 on the first pass. He had a pretty bad wreck. He was okay. Fortunately, one of those deals where safety equipment does everything it needs to do, but the car looks like a write-off. Yeah, I don't think they're fixing that car to go back out. But there was a couple. I think there's at least 2 other Canadians, possibly 3, and I've been trying to catch names as I've been watching this in between everything this week. So I know Darcy Macabre, who's from my end of town in Orangeville. He drove down, left last weekend. They went down. He's got it's a dart. I don't know what year dart it is. Not unfortunately that up to space on my Mopar products. Yeah. But they went down streetcar, like high 12-second car. He's down there doing well. There's like a bullseye style class, almost like a bracket style class. Pick a dial in, and you need to run as close to it all week long. And apparently it's high side or low side. And I think he dialed like 1298, and he's been like 98 and 97 at the 2 tracks, and like 1 hit or 2 hits and go each day type of thing. The Canadian I'm not sure about. We're trying to figure out the name on, and I feel like I found it, but I don't want to go on record. But he's from Alberta. It's a stick shift car. I want to say it's a GTO, but again, that's as far as I'll probably go. And he drove it from Alberta down to Florida. And if it's the same gentleman, I think he might be leading the stick shift class. So it's got, I don't know how many thousands of miles. That's got to be 3,500 miles.
That's a lot.
Like the 1,000-mile race week is like a break for this car. This is like a cool down just to get down there, right?
Yeah.
So he's down there. And I want to say there's another gentleman down there. I thought I heard something about Yukon. I know Alaska is down there, like the racetrack officials. They're supporting someone who's down there. I'm not quite sure how if any of that all ties together, but there's a few people down there we're watching for. So we'll keep cheering them on as they travel through this week. If you don't get a chance, Sick the Mag's got everything on there. Tom Bailey's site on YouTube. I know Bracket Life is the Canadian. Fill me in here now.
I'm not sure what you call it. We distributor maybe
Distributor. Okay.
for Sick the
For it.
Mag, the magazine. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you can find a lot of results through there and follow it through the week. So just something interesting with some Canadian content that is drag racing, and the only place that's probably able to drag race right now, which is Florida. So
Yeah.
thereabouts.
Exactly. So if you happen to get a Sick the Mag magazine you're in Canada, that has been in my house. That's been here.
There you go.
Rachel has handled it, and Rachel's packaged and sent it off to you. So Andrew, I think it's time.
Yep.
We'll get to the main event. Everybody's here. Everybody's waiting. I'm almost sweating, getting ready for this. So the top 25 Canadian drag racing top 25 list right now. I want to hit some points quick before we kind of just start listing off some names. We did a list. We had 16 panelists all come together. They voted on who their top 15 was per region. So we had separated. Now, Western Canada, we had, that group. That is a larger region, right? So obviously it's tough to hit everybody. And then we had a, kind of Southern Ontario region, then more of a Quebec, and then the Maritimes. So we went through all that, collected points for everybody, and then your different spot on each panelist list added to your points total. And then if your points total was, got you then into the top 25, that's how it all kind of worked out. And that's where you will finally sit. This based on all your points, based on what your peers chose. So, some people you may agree with, some people you might not agree with, some people from your area, maybe they're like the 7th or 8th best, you know what I'm saying, that might not have made this list because it is so spread out across the country and there's so many racers. But the idea going into this was really to highlight at least the top 5, sportsman racers or bracket racers more in Canada from coast to coast. So this really, truly, as far as we could get, is a genuine, these are the best 25 that we can find.
Yeah. And it's funny how it worked out. I mean, we looked at it and had an idea of, who do you think you'd put on the list just from an arbitrary standpoint, and then looked at the final list and it was done. And it was funny how it kind of mirrored what we maybe generally thought on a lot of places. A few surprises in a couple of different senses, but I think the framework in which you laid out, right, really, worked well, right? This is, who would be your pick when we laid it out, the top, picks for each person that was chosen to kind of put a list together that you would think could do well in, like 100K type win race, right? Who would be your top 15 to maybe be the final 15, that sort of scenario. And, it really played out well. So with that said, you've got this planned out better than myself. I will let you take over and steer the ship from here, and I will fill in as I go along.
Let's do it. So I'll begin. I just got to make sure I get the screen share sorted out. Share number. So one quick other note before we do this, we did not physically label it. You're not going to be number 7 or number 15. We've separated into segments. So our first group will be 21 to 25, 16 to 20, 10 to 15, 6 to 10, and then 1 to 5. Hard to pick an actual who is number 1. You can make that distinction for yourself. So we'll start the first person in the 21 to 25 group for the top 25 Canadian drag racers. We go to the island, Glenn McLean from Prince Edward Island. So it's cool, right? I actually had a different picture of Glenn because I remember him when I was when I raced in Miramichi. It was Jamie Bridges' old dragster.
Okay.
Did very well, and it was a contender there for a long time doing that. I learned a lot about Glenn. I've learned a lot about a lot of people doing this actually. So Glenn is a car builder and a racer. He's been racing for 40 years. Currently has the Top Sportsman Corvette you see in the pictures. So switched out from just going fast in the dragster. Now he's going fast in the door cars. Apparently, he's still tearing it up. So Super Pro, Top Sportsman, Box, Super Gas, and Super Comp are some of the classes he likes to race in. Multiple track championships through the years, former Pro Tree champion, Wally winner. So kind of does, as you heard from all the different class he races, a mix of everything, right?
Across the board success. Yep.
Exactly. And is also a member of the Maritimes Motorsports Hall of Fame. So that's cool, right?
Absolutely. And then it's one of the common themes you'll see as you go through the list is so many of these racers with this skill set and the resume in so many classes, like multiple championships in multiple classes, or multiple wins across many different segments. Right? It was one of the neat, interesting things that kind of jumped out as we started to look at this and break this down. So
exactly. So that's cool. So good for Glenn, obviously getting that recognition from his peers and from everybody else. And it's a sweet looking car.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have an affinity for vets as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Next in the 21 to 25 spots, Bill Shepard from Nova Scotia. So this is a cool picture, right? It's from Nova Scotia. This photo is from Toronto Motorsports Park.
Yes.
So obviously Bill likes to travel, likes to do all that different stuff, which is great. I'd imagine this picture was taken at a national open.
There was a year, and I don't remember which year it was, but there was a whole bunch of travel down from, I want to say maybe 2021, could be 2022 actually, now that I think about it too. But we've had a lot of success in the national opens with like East and West racers in the stock, super stock world traveling and heading out to the spots, right? And Bill and a crew from out East did travel out and had done well out in Cayuga. The East Coast has represented well when they've come to Cayuga to run the national open. Bill's had a very formidable career, right? NHRA national winner at the '94 Summer Nationals, two-time Atlantic Stock Super Stock champion, he's a former ADRA champion. He's run pro, no box, obviously stock, super stock, particularly based on what we're seeing here. Canadian Drag Racer Hall of Fame member, Maritime Motorsports Hall of Fame member. Just flat out a very good racer, and obviously worthy enough to have made the list here. It's the East Coast is very well represented to start the list off and carry through.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So we'll move through next one. Another East Coaster right there, Kelly McKay. Very similar kind of cars, right?
Yep.
I don't want to get I think I'm going to offend somebody if they are different. I didn't look that hard at it, so don't get upset with me. But they look similar, So Kelly McKay, long time racer, very similar as the last two that we had, Bill and Glenn. He had a great season last year, winning several events locally that you would have heard us talk about on the broadcast when we were doing the Canadian Countdown. I remember we talked about Kelly a few times. He did win in Naperville this year. So again, another traveler that would have been a National Open event as well. So a traveler from the East Coast. A lot of these guys, because there's only so much they can do. And then for a lot of NHRA stuff, because I believe they go across, because Epping's kind of close to them.
Yeah, I think it's Epping, the East Coast races. I think like Atco, trying to think of the Cecil County. Like you typically will see the Division I stuff, right? And I mean, it's kind of surprising when you look back through this too. Just there's a lot of NHRA sportsman racers on the East Coast. Like that type of racing is very healthy out there, right? For the amount of tracks and the numbers that the East Coast has. Like it's the Maritimes, I should say specifically. Like there are some great racers, and they do well when they start to travel. But it's a very heavy, NHRA class racing background out there. And I wasn't aware of that. That's the great thing about the Bracket Life broadcast. As we learn more with this, you don't realize these things. I should probably be transplanted out east, right? So
no, I hear you. Also in my notes here that I have for Kelly, so former ADRA champion, currently runner-up in the Stock Super Stock Series, multiple-time Wally winner. He does enjoy camping and Bud Light. Was wrote there, so I loved it. It was put on there, so I figured we might as well talk about it.
There you go. That's some of the background highlights we were given, and that's what we'll roll with.
Absolutely. So we'll switch. We're going to move across the country now, not all the way across, but awfully close. Head to Alberta. Lorenz Schwarz. This thing's sweet. Lorenz is a bad dude. I've talked to multiple people about Lorenz. I saw, witnessed him race, witnessed him win a 10 grand event when I was at the Oil City Classic last June in Alberta at Travis's event. So that was really cool. Does it on the bottom.
Yeah.
Bottom bulb guy, doesn't matter. Top, bottom, he doesn't care what class he runs in. He will stay on the bottom, and he's just as competitive as anybody.
That's another one of those themes you'll see as you go through this, I think, too, right? There's guys off the bottom who crack a list that scare you just as much. Doesn't matter what side of the tree they're going off, top or bottom, right? And he falls into one of them. He's just one of the early candidates we see that does mix it up in the box class and has done it successfully recently too.
Exactly. So I got some recent results from Lorenz. So like I said, last year, this is all just from this last season at all the TNT Motorsports events. So winner of the Sunday 10K at the Oil City Classic, runner-up then of the 7,500 no box shootout, that same event, last man standing in no box and Medicine Hat, and then was eventually the runner-up to that last man standing in no box, I should say, and was third in points at no box races, or at no box for the TNT events. So Lorenz has been on fire this year and has been, from what I'm told, 30 years of racing, he's just as bad, 30 years ago versus what he is now. So great racer, so good for him. I think a great, like I said, there's a lot of bottom bulb racers on here that really deserve it and genuinely are straight up better than a boatload of top bulb guys, Yeah, that's how good these racers are. So we'll move on next. We'll hit kind of in the middle of the country. I guess not really the middle, whatever you think.
Someone will correct us if we're wrong. So
someone will get upset about it, but closer, I guess. Braden Hero from Saskatchewan. So first thing I want to talk about Braden's car, the Scat Rat, is cool. Like, that's a cool race car.
It's a formidable looking car, right? Throw back to the era of the names and the cool graphics and icon look to them, right? Like, those are the cars you just fall in love with, right?
Yeah, that has to stay just like that. I'm a big fan of how that looks. So 2022 results for Braden. What I got, races, Saskatchewan International Raceway in Saskatoon, went to 6 finals this year in the no box class, won 5 of them. And from that is a stout field. They usually, I want to say 65, 70 entries at least in those types of events. So, mouths through them, does very well, is a traveler. A couple of years ago when I talked to Travis, goes to Edmonton, tears them up, goes to Medicine Hat, tears them up, doesn't matter, So
that's a lot of drive time too. Like, I say that out loud, not having looked at the maps on it, but I mean,
it sounds far. Right.
There's nothing that sounds close out west there, right? But to be able to do that, go out there and then, go to some of these tracks that you probably don't travel to very often, right? Like, in all honesty, these guys aren't hitting up the same racetrack every weekend like others who are much closer. And to go out there, unload against the locals and do as well as he's done over the years like that says a lot, I think. Yeah,
and Braden very involved in racing in the community, from what I'm told, involved on the board of the Saskatchewan Racing Series or whatever, I'm not sure exactly what the name is of it, but very involved. That's what I've heard, and, does a lot for the sport to keep it going. So, good for him for making it on the list. So that tops off our 21 to 25 rank there, Andrew. We'll jump in a little deeper here. We'll head kind of close to you, relatively close to you.
Well, we're in my part of the world now. So that's jump in there with the 16 to 20 spots. We'll hit it off with Benny Smith from Ontario. So Benny and his dad, Ed, well-known racers from, let's say, the western side of Ontario, from the Windsor area. Race a lot at Grand Bend, huge supporters of kind of the local racing scene, have raced a ton. For years, I think Ed followed a lot of the IHRA Division 3, Division 5 stuff. But like big money racers have done a lot of great stuff. Benny himself has really come into his own over the last few years. He's always been a great racer, but really, I want to say last year was one of those things where people got to know his name well at the 660 race, where I think he went to 3 finals over the 3 days, 2 of them in the 10K shootouts, won.
And then top dragster, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think he won one of the 10Ks and was in the final of the other 10K and the top dragster. But I mean, like a well-rounded racer for years before that. Multi-time big money race winner. He's a multi-time IHRA national event winner. He qualified to go to the IHRA runoffs. I'm trying to remember the year, and I couldn't remember it. And unfortunately, I think it was when he was in university, and like he couldn't go. Like the travesty of it all was there was a scheduling conflict, if I understood it correct, and he just wasn't able to be able to attend. And that might have been the year that his dad finished fourth in Quick Rod, who's, be one of those notable names maybe later on, like Ed's one of those guys that was in the fold, right, to be on a list like this, because he is another fantastic racer. But Benny's really deserved to be in a spot there. And I think he's one of those guys in the next few years, if they got on the road and traveled a bit more type of thing, I think you see him higher on this list, right? Just because I could see him having results at those bigger, more notable events in the world, and with that carrying probably some more marks for it, right?
Absolutely, and great dudes, right? Like,
oh yeah,
I hung out in the lanes with Benny and Ed a bunch, especially at those 660 races. They call doubles up first, and then I try my best usually to be right away, and then Ed and Benny come rolling up. So I haven't raced Benny as much as Ed, but a bunch of times.
Oh yeah. If you're doubled in the dragster class, these guys have no fear about going in circles and fast stuff too, right?
Absolutely.
But,
great. They're going like 450s for the most part, right? They're flying and have a great system. So I love racing with them. I'd love to do it more, and like you said, see them out a little more and travel, because then, as you said, I'm sure you're gaining more points up on this list.
One of the things I think that I want to say maybe you see affect a couple of spots on the list, right? Just throw it out there, because there'll be others we probably mentioned on this that they're in spots that maybe if they were more well known than others, just because of the events they've been in, maybe garners a few more votes amongst the panel. Just one of those things, right? I think it's one of those anomalies, one of those difficult parts. Back to being a racer in Canada, right?
Yeah.
It's you can be a great racer and race within 6 hours of your house, and unfortunately that's as far as you can go, and never leave Canada, and don't get the notoriety that maybe you deserve, right? But for many of these guys, they're in great spots.
Absolutely. So we'll move through next one. Richard Arnold. So this lad, it was interesting. I was kind of a little bit surprised to have Richard this high on it, but it only makes sense, right? When you look at all his resume for everything.
Yep.
First thing that obviously points out, Richard's the only Canadian to go to the finals of the original million.
Yes.
So
yeah,
that was
OG million.
Because what year was that, Andrew? You know more about that whole situation.
I was trying to stretch on the year. It was back. So if anyone else can remember this one, I remember the situation. It was back when the million was moving up to Indy. It was coming to the home of the U.S. Nationals, and there was an issue with the particular HRA that sanctions them, and they weren't okay with some of the rules that the million was going to run, and they had to move it to Muncie. And that race moved like the day of. If you followed any of the Flickr promotions things that happened this weekend down in like Louisiana, right? Almost that same type of thing, except it wasn't a timing system failure that caused them to move. It was just the ownership of the track going, that's not okay. So Richard packed up with several hundred other people and moved literally down the road to another track in Indiana, to Muncie, and raced and was in the million final. Every year that he goes to the million, I mean, this year was another year he was down there racing, and you see him up there and you can't discount that he's going to go rounds. He shows up at tracks. He's been to Grand Bend 660 races looking to go rounds, right? And done that. I think he won one of the 10 granders in 2001. I thought that was Richard.
Might be.
I'm almost positive it was. Now that I'm thinking back on it now, it's just one of those, the memory is working great all of a sudden now.
Exactly.
Whereas a half an hour ago when I had time to look this stuff up, couldn't recollect the thing apparently. But yeah, it's one of those racers that he's got that long resume, right? And a recent success to go along with it that just helps garner that spot where you can't take him lightly, and you want to, you're going to put a good round up against him. And until he shows otherwise, you're going to treat him as serious as anyone else.
Absolutely. And like right now, he's got the blower car. He's going 450s, if not a little quicker, but has been always really good. I've raced them for as well as long as I've been in big cars. So once I got out of juniors, and he's always been a force. He put on a lot of races before, did a lot of promoting and stuff like that. So has always been really involved in the sport. For the most part, he's been there and done that and won it all. You know what I'm saying? So out of Quebec, really a great pick and very fitting to have him in here.
To say this, was it Richard or was it Don Vincelli?
I think you're talking about Vincelli then, because Vincelli won the first
It was
one.
Vincelli. I was wrong. My
Yeah.
apologies. I was trying to think of someone there, and it was Vincelli. Nonetheless,
So
notable racer there for
either
the
way,
list. Let's just throw that out there.
that's right. That's right. So we'll move through next. The part-time plumber, full-time drag racer, as they call him, Russ Adams from Ottawa. This car actually no longer his. So
Yeah, there's no pictures of the new car yet, right?
no pictures of the new car yet. It's sitting at his house now. So he'll have that out this year. But yeah, Russ deserves to be here for sure. He was ranked very high on a bunch of lists, and rating that consistently in that, average placing. You know what I'm saying? So,
and he crossed
traveling-
over a bit too from like he was one of the few guys. It was a kind of neat. There was a few racers that crossed over from the East West list to the West list, right? For both sides, and he was one of those guys that got votes from both ends, right? Just as that racer, which was again one of those interesting, statistical pieces to it.
Yeah, and Russ loves to travel. He loves going to places. Numidia is obviously for the most part his favorite one. Puts on win lights anywhere, right? Wins a lot at home, wins a lot at Lustville, goes to Grand Bend, wins there, goes to Numidia, wins there. Where else? I think Atco, Beach Bend, different things. You can name off however many lists of different spots he has been to and been successful with. And that's why I said that's why it makes sense to have him up here. Doesn't matter where you really put him, he's going to do well. He's a great competitor, so absolutely.
I got the privilege of driving all the way to Memphis to drive him in round one. It was great.
Yeah. See,
yeah, it was
for
so
you
much
guys.
fun.
That's how much Andrew and Russ like each other. They will drive how many hours? Doesn't matter.
Oh, it was like 20 hours all the way to Memphis for $1,000 to enter a race. Yeah, just to race each other in round one. It was great.
Good for you guys. Good friends. Good friends. So next up, Jamie Tupper. Great pick, right? As are all these. But hands down, I think overall, for the most part, could arguably be very underrated in this 16 to 20 spot for what he has done, what he's accomplished. 2 or 3 years ago, World Super Pro Challenge 50K race winner.
2019, because it was the last year before the pandemic.
2019, last year.
He never got the chance to go back to defend it.
Yep, and has I know from different folks that I talked to, and I might have been a touch young for this to really, you always knew who Jamie Tupper was, right? That was just something I always knew who he was, but was a killer, let's say, I don't know, early 2000s, right through, and he was hitting her hard. They were going all over the place.
Yeah.
Jamie and Sheila traveling up and down the road and just collected money everywhere they went.
Yeah. They didn't matter what car combo they had. They'd show up and Jamie would be a threat to put a car into a winner's circle. Right. And that was across the board. And Jamie's been known to have a lot of cars, right? He's one of those guys.
A lot is an understatement.
That might be the biggest understatement. But the key thing to that was he's found success in everything he's had, right? Last couple years, they've taken a bit of time off from it just because, again, they travel a lot and there hasn't been any real ability to travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even when they showed up, they've, laid down great laps. Add in the 50K on top of the fact that he's done well, in IHRA trim. I mean, he's got a hot rod win under his belt with the TNT Super Series when it ran at the IHRA national event. If that wasn't a who's who of 1090 racers all going after some big money, then I can't tell you what would be. Top ET, top dragster, he's done well everywhere he showed up with. It didn't matter what he had. Mike Chenier's Corvette, for those out east. I mean, when Jamie had that car out here, it was a killer piece, as it is out east still, right? But very, just a great racer. And when he gets this blower car set up working, I think the way he wants to, then watch out, because there's no reason to say you won't see him in a big final next year. It's that type of skill level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So skipping through next one here, Mike Ingram, Nova Scotia. This car for one, when we were looking at the picture, I know some folks that are listening to this later on the Strictly podcast platforms, you don't get to see this. Mike Ingram, his car is wicked. It's a beautiful ride. I really like this. Just picks the wheels up just nice and comfortably. Looks like, you go for a good little tour down the track in that thing.
Yeah, just another like stock eliminator looking setup, right? Nothing crazy, but just a beautiful car, right? And falling right back into that, that sportsman racing aspect you see on the East Coast, right? 2022 pro champion in the Atlantic Pro Tree Series. I know you've got a bit more, input on Mike than I do, just because you got a little more on the East Coast guys than I do.
That's right. I've talked to Mike a little bit about some different things that he does, kind of involved in everything with it out there. Not obviously, not a dragster guy, sticks with the door car stuff, but is very good at the Pro Tree stuff with that would be stock, super stock and whatnot. And then is a great bracket racer on the same hand. So very versatile in whatever it is that he's doing. I'm not 100% sure if Mike is a bottom or top bulb guy, but either way, obviously very successful and very, thought of very highly from everybody in that area. So good for Mike making it on here. Next one, Andrew, that was our final one for the 16 to 20 group. We are now heading to 11 to 15. So we're getting down to the nitty gritty on it,
Yep. So moving to Brett Ramsey from Nova Scotia. So as I said, like East Coast is well represented in the list, right? In that there's a good mix of dragster, door car, top, bottom, and ranked pretty high when you looked at the overall aspect of it. I mean, I know we're not ranking in place per se, just kind of breaking up into divisions of 5. Yeah. But one of the, I want to say first ones, because I can't speak to everyone's history, but at least one of the ones that jumps out, right? One of these former junior dragster graduates, right? So we're getting into that part of the list where you're seeing that success that came from the junior routes, or that experience coming from the junior routes, really jumping into the large door car or dragster side of things. He's driven fast door cars. Apparently he's got a fast dragster right now too. Current ADRA champion and current Atlantic Pro Tree Super Comp champion, multi-time Wally winner. Again, one of those young racers that I think is built, from what I take of it, a resume that you can't rule him out of being successful, and he will win big events. Super comp racing is some of the hardest racing out there when you look at it when it comes to the 90 category, just because of how deadly these cars are, right, in that level. So to find the success they've had, and there's a good series out there. I mean, it's not like it's a few car series. So to find the success he has certainly speaks volumes about his skill level and, possibly even some bigger signs of things to come for him, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then his dad, we've talked about different people we've spoke about on the broadcast before. Brett Ramsey and Chad Ramsey together on results lists that we've spoke about during the Canadian Countdown multiple times. When I saw this name come up on the list, I knew that guy was good because we have spoke about it so many times, right? Because you get these results, you read through the names, whatever. But then once you start seeing them, 5, 6, however many more times, you really start to see a trend and notice it. So I think it makes sense to start that off for the 11 to 15 group. So we'll scroll through. Next one, Frank Angers.
So maybe I'll let you handle the next two, because the Angers better than I do. And
so, yes, I'll give you a bit of a spoiler here, right? So Frank is right now. The next one is Fred. Every list that had one of the two of them had both. And they were straight side by side with it for the most part. Anybody who pays attention to anything, I'd say that the twins here, they extend their region. People in the Maritimes have heard of the twins. People out west have heard of the twins. Everybody knows who Fred and Frank Angers is. from whatever the reputation is, because they are great racers. They show up at all these big events, have great results, and do well. Obviously, involved with the Bracket Super Tour, really helped bring a live bracket racing here. I'm not saying it was dead or stale or anything like that, but the Super Tour now has become one of the most prestigious series in Canada, if not the most prestigious series in Canada for money. That would be along with Travis's deal with the TNT races at West. So those are kind of the upper level of competition that they created, and both of them have won in the series with the toughest racers from our side of the country. You know what I'm saying? And that's not just in dragsters, that's in door cars as well, roadsters, doesn't matter what it is. They do excellent in it. Great racers, great strategy, and great guys, right? I'll click it here. We'll keep talking about them, but I'll click to the next one.
Not the same car, just for anyone who's on the
exactly
right. This is two different cars. This threw me for a loop too when I first saw them.
Yeah. So the easy giveaway now for this one, for people that don't figure out. So Fred's car, carburetor up top. Frank's car, big blower on it, or the mini blower, I guess. I don't want to say it's the big one.
Yeah, the mini blower.
Yeah. So, like I said, great racers in everything. Doesn't matter what side of the ladder it is on, door car or dragster. They've always done well, and you're never excited to race one of the twins. But awesome to have them on here. They deserve it. This is right where I put them, where I would have ranked them both. So, yeah, really good, and for our single area, top 10, top 5, if even for both of them.
No, that's fair enough.
Next one, we got a good one here. Here we go. Andrew Sturck laying it out there from Ontario. I love this picture. Nice wheel stand.
Picture. Yeah.
Nice,
shout out to John Chambers on that one from Luskville this past year.
Yeah.
So,
I don't want to hit that while you talked about Chambers there. I did want to say this for all the photographers that have these photos. I don't know where I necessarily got them all from or whatever, but awesome job. I love all the photographers really do a great job at getting all the great pictures of the race cars. And, I don't want it to be understated with how good these are. Andrew, I'll run through your list here because I'm sure that, it's not always that comfortable, right? To just I did this, right? I'm this good. No, I get it. I totally get it. Andrew Sturck, 7 track championships scattered across all 3 of the Southern Ontario area, correct? I believe there's
correct. Yeah.
Just
St. Thomas, Grand Bend, Cayuga. So those were.
And then there's not very many other people who have accomplished that at all 3 racetracks. Is that correct?
To my working knowledge, I'm not aware of anyone. It was kind of that when I won the St. Thomas championship, it was the kind of, has anyone done this type moment? I think others have won St. Thomas and Cayuga. Like everything's been done in pairs just because of geography. But I don't know. That's kind of a real prideful point was I was able to crown to each one of them. So until someone corrects me, I'm rolling with that.
Yeah. And that's cool. That's cool. 3 IHRA Summit Super Series track championships, an IHRA No Box Division championship as well in there. Top 10 in the IHRA World Championship standings twice. Was 8th and 7th. That's a no box in hot rod, so very versatile, right?
Some days.
Exactly. 3 national event wins: no box, super rod, and hot rod. 4 NHRA Ontario Provincial Championships. We have 3 Ironmen, 3 bracket Ironmen, and then 1 divisional Ironman, and over 100 wins in the career that we're keeping track of to this point.
Well,
right? Adding the talents.
Rough estimate with
rough estimate,
under, but
that's all good. But it sounds great. So Andrew, not only are you just running the Roadster here, you have the Mustang as well. So different speeds, different types of cars, both on the door car side, but very different rides and very different kind of strategies for it. Roadster obviously top bulb. The Mustang will do top, bottom, whatever you need it to do.
Best thing I found was Ted Barnes put up a new logo on his car. It just says multi-purpose, and honest to God, that's exactly what the Mustang is. But I appreciated the thought. I mean, I'll chime in, I guess, a little bit that, like, of where I came in. I mean, I think it's an honest spot when you look at the top racers from here on up, right? And really start to look at it. Like, if I'm to sit here and be honest about it, I'm certainly a hit and miss type racer. When I'm on, I'm on. When I'm off, I'm off. If you want to look for a reason why I'm personally I couldn't be higher or shouldn't be any higher, maybe I'm a touch higher than I should be to begin with, but we've done well, right? So
Absolutely.
certainly proud of where I kind of ranked in here and whatnot.
And the resume is there, right? And then, like we said, this is all voted on by a group of our peers and stuff. Like, this isn't just my opinion or Andrew's opinion to put in there. This is what it is. This is where you deserve to be, is on this top 25 list. I think it's a great spot.
I also think it's time to move on. So
I hear you. Jason Pad will hit on from Alberta. Jason did get the fortunate, I don't know, circumstance isn't the right word. Jason beat my ass when I was in Alberta. Let's play it at that. We were out there when I was racing the dragster on the Sunday, my final day there. I would race him round 1. So what I've learned about Jason Pad, because one of those other things that just kind of a name you kind of knew, or for myself that I kind of just recognized through it. So what I'm told is, in the last 5 years, give or take, but arguably the winningest driver in Western Canada for events and money wise.
Yep.
For that, leading on those top 3 in points for top E series, so the top eliminator Edmonton series, last at least 3 out of 5 years, and has won the series twice. So that, to this point, I know we've talked about Travis's events being like very prestigious and everything like that for the series. Top eliminators Edmonton has been around for a long time and has been at the forefront of Western Canada racing.
Yeah.
And
probably one of the longest standing big money type series is out in the West Coast that we're generally aware of, right? And they've been around for a long time. One of the quarter mile series, right? It's like a fast car setup, but I mean, there's a lot of great racers in it when you go down the list of who runs there, and to be as successful as he has been, and on with 8th Mile Racing making inroads, right? In a lot of in Canada in general, right? That's a Canadian comment more than probably anything else. To make the switch up and still be as successful with series that aren't running all the same lengths. I mean, that's a difficult skill level to match, right? When you're so good at the quarter mile like he's been.
Yeah, and week after week, right? They'll switch quarter mile to 8th mile depending on the event each week. So you have to change your whole strategy and your whole outlook at it. So he does very well with that continuously. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I really hope I get to go back to Alberta and I'm chasing Jason Pad to the lanes, whether that's a wise idea or not. But we'll try it.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton, right?
So next, 6 to 10 category. Started off Craig Johnson, British Columbia. Some of you might remember Craig. We have had him on the broadcast before with us. This was after his, I believe that was a 10K win as well, the Oil City Classic one we spoke about. When we had him on.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was really cool. I made a big deal of it then. I'm going to make a big deal about it now. For 2022 Super Pro Mission Dragway Points Champion, Super Pro, so top bulb. This is a foot brake racer that won the Super Pro Championship. So,
back to the aspect for those who are listening on the podcast, right? This is a low 7-second 8th mile wagon, right?
Yeah.
Running off the bottom. I think on the trans brake, right? Not foot brake.
No, foot.
It's a foot? It is foot.
He's strictly foot braking.
Yeah. So, I mean, that says a lot right there, right?
Yeah. Craig is a great competitor. For those of you that can obviously see, this is not the state-of-the-art unit, right? This is not, when you go choose a foot brake car you're going to take on the world with. I don't think this is the one. But Craig it's a lot cooler than it is.
And Craig spoke about that on the podcast. He talked about the equipment he's using and like they just maximize it, which is, I mean, that's bracket racing, right? You take what you've got and you maximize the potential on it. And boy, have they ever with this setup, right? And used it to get into a lot of round wins, right? And I mean, when you do this, like when you talk about skill sets, right? Like, there's talk about knowing how to hold numbers. Like, you don't exist in Super Pro with a car that's on the far end of the ET scale without being comfortable doing it and being good at doing it, right? And just having a clutchness to your operation, right? Like, you need to go in there and execute, and you don't hear about those rounds where it's like, yeah, you got into the mix of it and, couldn't get it sealed up. Like, if he loses, he just lost on a better run, right?
Yeah.
Not on a bad run, just on a better run,
Yeah, absolutely. Hands down. So I really look forward to seeing more of what Craig does now that we have channels to really pay attention to what he's doing. Right. And we get to get this out. So this is really cool. Going to stay successful for a long time.
Absolutely.
Jason McNeil here, Nova Scotia. So once again, we've talked about Jason a boatload on here. We've talked about his son a lot as well in juniors. Bryson McNeil.
Yep.
Sorry, I was trying to find the name of that quick. So Jason, I raced when I was out there in Miramichi. Great competitor, one of the best from that area. That's why he sits where he sits on this list. Is not just strictly a dragster guy, has a Monza as well. Very versatile, like most of these folks are that are from the Maritimes. I think in some of these other spots, where I am, I would, not as versatile, as these other folks are doing. We don't have the opportunity to race for these.
No, I don't think, and it's probably not much different than when you see out and where we are when we had the IHR events, right? Like, when you get out to the East Coast there, there's not a lot of big money racing, but there is enough class racing, right? That, if you want to get on, your horse and travel, like, that was the big ticket racing, right? And, we had IHR racing in our backyard here in Western Ontario. So, I mean, you had a lot of versatile racers who found success on both sides or learned how to become successful in both forms of racing. And then that's the thing you see with Jason, right? He is very versatile in what he can race in and what he does well in.
Yeah, so I want to highlight some of those classes because I got it listed here. So Super Pro, box, no box, Super Street, Super Comp, has won the ADRA bike class championship once as well. So, if you're talking about being versatile, if you're talking about being versatile, there's not much more you can do. So you win a dragster, you win a door car. What else is there? Oh, well, we'll do it on two wheels as well. So that's really cool. Jason's very involved in the junior dragster class. We talk about him a lot. We do some work with Bracket Life with them, send some prizes that way and whatnot. And then Jason as well, you would have heard us talk, is the Pro One dealer for the Maritime area. So absolutely. I think it very fitting spot for Jason here. So good for him. Also, quick shout out though, Jason did help a lot with getting information on these racers. So when you talk about someone that really cares about who it is that he's racing with, and then everything we're doing here with Bracket Life, puts in a lot of effort to really make sure we're informed and helps out getting us good information so we can talk about everyone.
Which speaks volumes to the competitiveness of them too, to have this much background info on people.
Exactly.
The people you're racing against then too.
Exactly. And I have lists, like I know their job title and where they work and everything. Like Jason knows these racers. So good for him. So next one in their 6 to 10 category, Benny Neaston. Great looking ride. Great looking, awesome. Old school race car.
It's got that classic super gas look, right? Like that Nova and say classic super gas, and he's the 2022 super gas champion in the Atlantic Pro Tree Series. So there ain't much classic about it. It's a current winning automobile, right? And the driver in it has much to do with it as anything, probably.
Yes, absolutely. So Benny is the 2022 Super Gas champion of the Atlantic Pro Tree Series. Very similar, I guess, family situation that I'm learning about. So both of Benny's parents race. His brother races and his daughter races. So sounds like a situation I know about.
Yeah.
Or one that I might be in.
Well, and that speaks volumes to be successful when you have that many people around you racing, especially if there's a daughter in a junior car, or just not a junior car, but in another car, I should say.
Another car,
and just like your head needs to be wound on right if you're trying to be successful while working and helping and crewing and cheering on everyone else around you.
Yeah, so, it's a lot. There's a lot of work that goes into it.
Absolutely.
So multi-time track and ADRA champion, Wally winner, sounds very accomplished. And like I said, love the race car. Great dude. Hope to see him back. We've talked a lot about him We've talked about, I believe his dad is Hank Neaston. We've spoke of another duo that we've talked about a bunch here during the Canadian Countdown for results.
Absolutely.
Killer Kyle Jessup rolling in here. This one, another versatile racer. We picked the dragster because this is the race car they've had for I don't know how long, almost as long as I can remember. That he's been racing this dragster, has done it on different dragsters, his car, other people's cars, door cars, roadsters. Has tried his hand at foot brake a few times. Does very well. A very aggressive finish line driver. One of the best finish line racers that we have in our area that we get to watch, in a place that really doesn't allow for much room at the finish line, really takes advantage of it. Especially when we'd go to those North races, Ellie Lake, Wawa, Chapleau, everything like that, clean up, right? Because when you're on a marginal racetrack, he could just drive better than most of his opponents, if not all of his opponents.
A natural ability, right? Like there's the racers out there that have developed skill sets, right? Developed programs, right? And he's got that as well because he's got good equipment as well. But just if there's a natural ability there, you see that. And I mean, you take that as a generational thing. I mean, his father Carl, right, was one of those racers that if this list was done, I don't know how long ago Carl raced for, but however long it was going back, he'd have cracked this list with no problem at all.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So you've got that. And I don't think you come through a family with that much skill level as it sounds like with Carl had and not pick up that natural driving ability like Kyle has. Right. And, another one of those guys that like, I don't want to say is victim to lack of travel because again, not everyone can travel. Right. And that's one of the things, but maybe he isn't as well known as he could be based on the fact that if he had the ability to go out and do more, right, or travel a bit more, right, and whatnot, you'd probably have seen his name on big checks, out of the U.S. and other places like that too, because he certainly has that ability to win those type of races without,
absolutely,
banting an eyelash.
I agree. So great description. I don't really want to give him too big of a head. We've talked about him, so much already. It's
we do have to deal with him this summer.
Yeah,
you more than me, but yeah,
he'll give it to you a lot more than he'll give it to me, though. But we'll move to last one on our 6 to 10 group here. Dale Gauthier. Andrew asked me earlier, does he just never run a hood? No, there was a whole incident with it, but he likes the no hood look though. He's really feeling it lately.
It works. It works.
It does. It does. Dale currently, right now, number 1 on the power ranking for the Bracket Super Tour Super Pro points, the most of any driver in the series ever, and there is a comfortable lead there too.
Yeah.
So that is just consistency over. I want to say we're 7 or 8 years now.
Yep.
In the Super Tour that they are keeping track of, and I think that Dale has like a 2,000 or 2,500 point lead.
Yeah.
To number 2 to who's in second place.
It just shows it's one of those few places that we're able to find, I want to say statistical data to back up a spot, right, on this list where he's like, how do you put him up there? Well, there's a power ranking from a series that we look at that we've gone on record as saying is probably one of the, premier series in Canada. And he sits at the top of that. Mm-hmm. Right. And if that doesn't show you success over years and the ability to be competitive year in, year out amongst some of Eastern Canada's best racers, then, I don't know what other information you can kind of gather other than what have you done for me recently? And every week that I was at the Super Tour last year or heard about it, this was a guy that was in the mix, going rounds, winning something or being right in the thick of it. So, and that's year over year. He's won at my events. I believe he was one of the winners at my event.
He won at your. I think he won at one of your events.
Yeah, if it wasn't him, it was his wife. So
I know Becky won.
Yeah, she won.
Wife Becky won. So just a family of accomplished racers for one. So Dale obviously here has won for over 30 years.
Absolutely.
When Saint Air was doing a bunch of the 10s and 20s and whatnot, I think actually only did 120. We're doing 10s. There is a bunch of $10,000 checks that Dale collected in not only his Camaro, Brian Acker's car as well that they have right now. So, once again, has won in multiple race cars, not as out there as everybody else. I believe he has raced the dragster once, though, and won in that once.
But when you're as good as you are in the car he's in, the type of cars, you don't need to hop seats, right? So,
yeah. And this is a car that he's had for years, right?
Yeah.
Like, this thing came from where it was to where it is now. One of the baddest hot rods you can find in a Super Tour event or in this side of Canada for sure. So, and hands down, one of the best on the door car side. I don't care what day it is or what racetrack you're at, and I don't think there would be anybody who's going to argue that he is, it for the door car side. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So into the top 5 here.
So again, in no particular order.
No particular order. Yes,
but
absolutely.
These are the 5 that garnered, the
highest points.
Response. Yeah.
Exactly. Monty Beagle from Alberta. So this one makes sense. So this is a cool fact I learned about Monty Beagle. And if you might have been paying attention, I first heard about Monty watching the Spring Fling Vegas events. He had won the bottom bulb side because they separate them from the door cars.
Yeah.
Monty has only raced for 5 years. And is down there bottom bulbing and killing everybody.
And that's kind of the who's who too. Like when you get to this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool fact. I just learned that about an hour ago, well, 2 hours ago now. So only 5 years, used to do some car shows, own an auto shop, saw some drag racing going on. And it's like, well, that's neat. Let's try this.
Yeah.
Jumps in and is just a killer right off the hop. Does very well. Will run against top or bottom cars. He does not care.
Yeah. Another common theme. Like if you're good, you're good. It don't matter. And you don't care.
Exactly. So we've talked about him obviously a bunch on the broadcast all through the year. 2022 Classics no box points champion. That's just for the shootout events. Was lights out right there, neck and neck with Craig Johnson for who would be the best box guy. Monty obviously got the nod here with a couple higher points than Craig, but like elite level no box racer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. With a unique whip, right? Like
it's cool. It's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Next year, Chevy Reeves. Great one. Once again, you would remember Chevy. We've had him on not that long ago. So that'd be, well, I guess now like 3 or 4 months now, give or take a touch on that. 2022 Classics box points champion. Great ride, great drag. So that thing is flying. Has 2 dragsters in the family that they run. He was holding big checks in both of them this year. So had the white dragster out, did very well at the Oil City Classic. I believe they went to Medicine Hat next or something like that. Hurt the engine in the white dragster. They have a black and blue one that they took out and then collected a big check in a shootout event. Honestly, can't remember right off the top of my head if it was Medicine Hat or Mission. But either way, don't matter. Big check's big check.
Absolutely.
And especially when they say 20 grand on them. Yeah, that's a big deal. So really came into his own in the last few years. Was a junior kid, did all that stuff, got up, had a slower start, I guess, to his career. But then really once he started finding a good rhythm, is very good. Very good.
One of those student of the sport type situations, right?
Yes.
Like grew up in it. I mean, when your family owns
the racetrack, right?
The premier track, right? IHRA National Event Facility when it was on IHRA track, now IHRA National Open track. Like you can't help but pick up on this stuff, right? And as I said, like once it all came together for him, it's been, lights out. And that's how that goes sometimes, right? Like it takes some time to make that adjustment and make that jump, but doesn't mean that the foundation wasn't laid out for it to happen, and certainly when it comes together, it has come together very well for him. Very well.
Absolutely. So we're getting down closer to the end.
So this is my turn to jump in, right?
That's right.
So we're into the last couple here. So hitting the 1 to 5 spot, Brandon Barker. So let's just talk about Brandon for a minute, since I had to have that joy a couple minutes ago here.
That's right.
And I don't feel like this is a stretch by any means, because the resume here is for the amount of years you've been running in big cars, right? you've had a wealth of success. So back to the Super Tour parts, right? 2018 Super Tour champion, first and second. One of those series that allows you to run two numbers. So naturally, just make sure you take first and second. 2018 Show Me the Money Super Tour champion. So that's two championships in the year. 2019 Triple Crown Points champion. 2020 was a big one. I remember doing the interview with you on the stage. Shannonville Drags Points Championship, Super Pro Championship. The history you've had with Shannonville and your family's history, that was quite the huge one for you. 2022 Luskville Super Pro Dragster Points champion. You're tied for the winningest bracket Super Tour driver with 6 wins. So back to the really cool part about the Super Tour. They've got a lot of statistics. It's kind of cool to watch because it really backs up a lot of the stuff that we were talking about here when you're asking, like, well, get some empirical data here. Well, Brandon leading the pack of some of the best racers in Eastern Canada with 6 wins. And your big money list. And that's where I think when we talked about it earlier, right? Some of these things really add up. Miramichi, 10K winner. Mid-Michigan, 10K winner this past year, 2022. You've been down to 14 cars in the million. You've won at Luskville, Icar, Naperville, Grand Bend, Esta, Elliott Lake, Wawa. Like, you talk about a variety of tracks and places that are tracks for 3 days, right? Let alone their entire lives. It's a long list. And you've done all this at not 30, well enough under 30 to not even be a number worth mentioning, like I just did, to be honest with you. An accomplished list, right? And I think that's where people who voted on this weighed in on this, was that you have one of those careers to this point where you've certainly proven it on Canadian tracks, you've proven it on US tracks, you've proven it against some of the best in the world, right? And deserving spot to be in where we bring you in.
Absolutely. And I appreciate it, right? This is really cool to be set up here. Obviously, when you're doing all the numbers, Andrew and myself got to look at everybody's picks and whatnot that were sent in. So then it's kind of, when you're the ones doing, the top 25 list, and then you end up being, put up in the top 5,
there's question marks. You want to make sure that this isn't
that's
just
right,
some anomaly, right? And
exactly. So, but it's really cool. It's neat to be able to have it listed, and look at it, and really, like you said, it hasn't been that long, but I guess it feels like it has been quite a while.
Well, it's the junior career, right? I mean, you've been racing juniors. You've been racing pretty much your whole life. I mean, from a statistical standpoint, right?
I think this will be my my 21st year racing. I started juniors when I was 6, so that's a long enough career to this point.
And I'm at 30. Like, it's an insane number to think about when you look at it, right? But that's where I think that weighs in on a lot of this, and you see that with other members of the top 25, right? It's that junior influence part that comes in. So
absolutely,
so I'm excited here. The last two coming up at us. So Will Steckley. Again, I want to put this out there because I don't want anyone to get hung up on this. This is not 1 and 2. This is the top 5, because I think you could sit down and make a lot of good conversation on these next two as to who could be the number 1. And I don't really want to get into that because, in all honesty, I'd love to see them duke it out on the track more often to figure that out for us, which is plausible, could happen. But Will's got a driving career that just spans, again, probably like 30 years. Jesus, I'm not even sure how long now, to be honest with you. But 2-time IHRA world champion. I believe he's been to the finals 3 times in total. I don't even know how many track championships at Grand Bend, to be very honest with you. If anyone in the audience can chime in with a very rough number, I'm looking at, Dan Piper or anyone else from the Western Bloc there. But I mean, if he's not in the points run every year at Grand Bend or the Hunt, then it's not a calendar year because he's always in the Hunt. Has won multiple grand championships, does it off the bottom, does it off the top. He can roll down to the no box race. I want to say he's won the no box bonanza at Norwalk. I mean, if that wasn't a murderer's row of hitters when you look at Norwalk for the type of talent they have. Joe typed in too many. That's fair enough. Thank you for
Yeah,
that,
we
Joe.
got two of them. We got Blaze and Joe, both of them.
Yeah, that's
right away. How
kind
many
of.
championships has Will won? Too many.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not sure if he's won St. Thomas. Maybe someone could get that one on for me too, because I feel like he's successful there. Again, he can just show up. He's so analytical in his racing. That man knows what's going on at all times. He understands the surface. He understands the track. He doesn't do it on a huge budget. I think that's part of the reason why you get people that I mean, if you don't know him to an extent, it's either because you're not from the area, or you just live under a rock. I guess I'll live under that and die by that one. But like, he's just that good of a racer. He's won both mod and top this year at Grand Bend, driving a different car completely. Brian Brutsky's 68 Camaro. Like, this guy, thanks Paul Grant jumped in there. He did win No Box Bonanza. I was pretty sure, again, sometimes the brain works, memory kicks in a little bit. Again, this guy is one of those guys where if you see him at the track in either his Daytona or in Brian's Camaro, just if you can pick him up on a Calcutta, just do it. If you can avoid racing him, do that. And if you get to a final with him, make a good deal, because I got to be honest with you, he has owned more world champions that I could ever count on a list, because he has run at Grand Bend. When IHRA came to town, he was one of those guys who would mop the floor with everyone who jumped into that class, right? If you could put Will on the road, I think he'd have a plethora of those type of 10 and 20 grand checks from U.S. tracks, and I wouldn't bet against it. So, Ray Orr even jumping in. I appreciate my Western Ontario guys here jumping in, backing me up here with information. His many checks from Norwalk. That's one of those tracks that he has done well at as well. And if you've done well at Norwalk, boy, if that doesn't say something about you, I don't know what does.
And we've talked about this, same thing as before on the broadcast. I had one run in with Will. That was at the 660 Nationals this last year. I was in the lanes. I actually came over to tell him how sweet the Corvette or the Camaro was that he was driving. I know who Will Steckley is, but I didn't know that was him. You know what I'm saying? I've never crossed paths with him before that point. So I just had this conversation with him, have a good time. We end up running each other. I believe I'm 11 total.
Yep.
That's good. I'm laying it down, letting him know.
Yeah.
No. Will Steckley is 6 total. He's 2 dead 4 beside me. I get back and I find out, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, Will Steckley, doing that. Oh, well, I guess that makes sense then.
You could stand beside him all day long, and he's the quietest guy. And it's funny because in the world that we live in, it's sometimes you see a little, like, I think you have to have a little bit of ego to run around here and be as good as anyone can be. That guy is quiet. He just takes everything in. Like, I mean, he's confident in himself. Don't be fooled by anything. He could be having a bad day and he's still confident what he can do, but you'd never know you were even standing beside him. And he'll never correct you. If you're talking about him and you don't even know you're talking to him about him, he wouldn't correct you. And that's one of those things that just, I take with that individual as just, it's one of those rarities, but it's part of what makes him so great is that, there's never a moment that he doesn't think he's, not human, but at the same time, he's just really not human. Like, he's that good at times.
I hear you. I agree. I'd love to see Will be able to travel more and put it out there.
Yeah.
And show it off to people to a certain degree. So we'll wrap it up now. We're at the final
name on the list. Let's put it that way,
of
right?
Our 1 to 5 group here in the top 25 list. I think for the most part, if you've been watching, you should be expecting or have an idea, at least if you're from my area, Andrew's area, rolling up the final one we have that was missing, Derek Malcolm from Ontario, obviously racing at Lustville Dragway. His father Arnie owns that. Wicked racer. Very similar to kind of not as long of a career yet as what Will Steckley has. And to a certain degree, you're right, hinged a little bit on with how little you're able to travel. But whenever he does travel, then it lights out.
Yeah.
You're betting on Derek, that Derek's going to take it down. I believe they said 7-time points champion at Lustville Dragway. I believe he's won the Super Tour championship before. does very well in this dragster, as well as, has ran a 650 truck for the last little bit. At one point, they raced an Alter for a little while and had won multiple races in track championships in that. So can drive different vehicles and be very good. Has always been lights out. Probably one of my favorite guys to race, that brings the best out in me with how competitive we are with each other. Obviously, good friends and whatnot. But just when you talk about, and this is something we always discuss or whatever that comes up, but if you talk about like playing games on a racetrack, whether that's a staging duel or you want to flicker the ball or you want to do this, do that, don't do it with Derek. Depending on who you are, he'll go out, he'll throw it out there a little bit, especially if you're, myself or Kyle or whoever, he can flicker the ball that bottom stage like nobody else, Yeah. But if you want to get into those games, he is so focused that, that will only make him better. Yeah. So like realistically, my advice when you race Derek is just get in stage, do that. Cause don't get him wound up, because he's awesome. When I talk to Derek about himself right now, because Derek knows what he does, right? Derek knows how good he is for it. And then goes through, but right now he deals with the juniors, deals with all the track prep, gets up in the morning, 5:30, scrapes the track at Luskville, does the track prep, gets it all set up. Him and Troy go at it, do all their thing, make sure the timing system's good throughout the day. If you're at Luskville, if there is an issue with anything,
he's on it.
He's in there, whether he's in his car or he's back at the trailer or doing whatever, he's got to go there, get it fixed up, and still turns on every win light. Not everyone, but you know what I'm saying? Like those massive win lights, travels places, goes, won the 15K race at Grand Bend this year. That was, when it was merged on the Saturday night. So
I think it speaks volumes back to that, like your last two here, right? So Will and Derek have that same, almost exact same type storyline. Their success level is just off the charts from their area, right? Mm-hmm. Like off the charts. You head east. I mean, if Derek shows up at your track and you're not aware of him, you're going to figure out who he is pretty fast, because he will, as you've said, he'll dictate that to you. The fact that he does as well with as much on his plate at his home track, right? Which I don't think can be understated. I mean, imagine trying to run the operations of the drag strip. I'm not talking about the race. Just make sure the place operates, and then try to get into a car and look after a junior on top of it, and just be good. Or not even good, be great. And on a bad day, just be good. Speaks volume about your focus. He's a student of it. Like the stuff that I would be driving back and he's telling me what I should be putting dial-ins on the car. And he's not wrong. Like he's watching what's going on. They're watching what's going on the track. Again, the last two guys, you want to take a skill level, at the very least. And I only leave Brandon out because he's on the podcast with me right now. And I don't want to pinpoint him out too badly. But these guys are students of what they do every day. They know what's going on. They know what you're doing. They know what they're doing. And if you want to take stuff away from this list, learn something from this as we've gone through it, because I think it's an excellent list, is to be at the track paying attention to everything. Because if that's what these two are doing and that's what I see, then that's part of the success, right? And Derek exemplifies that, because he is focused from the second he's up till the second he's down. And one of the rare times I've seen people shut down his own party because he knows he's got to get up and roll the next day. That's a skill level that I haven't figured out yet very well. So
exactly. So a great way to end it off, I think, with Will and Derek. If there was numbers, like we said, I think arguably that's 1 and 2.
Yeah, and I don't want to say who 1 and 2 is, because I couldn't make that argument very well. But like, there's your two guys. You plant them anywhere in Canada with their whip, I'm not betting against them in any manner over a 3-day race, right? Yeah. Just not. There's no way I'm doing it. Doesn't matter.
No. So I agree. So that was good. I think that's a great list for it. Is there people missing? Potentially. More than likely, with people who you can mix them all in. For the most part, I really think it was hammered home, So I want you, people in the comments that are paying attention, we had Joe said about, different world champions should have been on this. let us know. Talk to us about it. Who should be on this list?
Well, and
Not
that's
necessarily who shouldn't be. We don't need to get into who shouldn't be on the list.
But I mean, that's the hard part. You could go 25 to 35 in those next 10. Some of the biggest points I think we found when we talked it through are some that didn't have a recency. They had a history, no question, but the recency wasn't maybe there, right? I'm speaking for the people who put the votes in, right? I'm not speaking from anything else, but I want to say consistency in that. On the flip side, there was quite a few people that had a lot of recency that maybe just like you give them 2 more years of success, there's no question they're on this list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the hard part about this type of stuff is if you could put these people on a track together, like you see at some of these US events, this is, I won't say easier. It's still not easy by any means. And we watched that with the spring fling or the fling race, right? Where, I mean, they picked 48 and there's still 48 more people that people could contentiously argue should be in there, and they won't be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This has almost no grounding to say, well, this guy's raced this guy, because many of these people have never even met in person, right? But I think you'd have a tough time arguing that many of them shouldn't be there, and you'd also have a harder time saying there's another 10 or 15 or 20 that maybe can make a record for them or a point to be on it next year.
Yeah, absolutely,
no question, right?
Absolutely. So this will be something we're going to work on and keep track of and do it next year. So, make a mental note of it, right? See who moves, who goes up, who goes down from year to year. And, there's obviously, I don't want to start with necessarily a huge honorable mention kind of list of it because there's so many, right? There's so many people we missed from the Maritimes, from both of our areas, from out west. If you want to talk, world champions that weren't on the list.
There's multi-time national event winners that weren't on the list.
Huge,
there's multi-time big money winners that weren't on the list. Like it's a non-exhaustive list. This isn't the top 25 that are going to save Canada from the end of the world. I wouldn't want to be part of that committee. This is, the top 25 as deemed by, let's just say your peers, because in all honesty, like the group we picked from was racers that we run with, right? But it's a non-exhaustive list, but it's kind of neat. I mean, it's the first one I've seen put out by any Canadian media outlet, if that's what we want to call ourselves, in any loose manner.
I like it. Sounds good.
But I mean, it's a neat way to talk about it. I mean, would I love to see next year maybe we do a bottom bulb list? Yeah, because I think you're going to see some interesting names pop up there. Some we've already seen here. I mean, no question, some we've already seen here.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to see some on a box only list that are going to cross over, that are going to be on that list. Some that'll be on both, right? That's the thing about this. And you could make a class racer list. I swear to you, if you went down that, there's names that are going to jump up there. They're going to be like, yeah, that's right. Because there are some amazing men and women in Canada who race just class racing, who are easily on their own top 10 list of that world, because that's a different world again, right?
Yeah, and might miss the same thing because you only see what you see.
Yep.
So, but that's pretty much what we got. That was good. That was a good top 10 list. We appreciate everybody staying on, everybody be involved. A lot of I tried to get as much hype as I could for this. For it. It was cool.
We are competing with Valentine's Day, right? So
yeah. But what is more exciting? I don't want to argue that because my wife's watching as well.
Nope. Mine too, probably. So.
All right, guys, we'll let you guys all go. Thanks again for a great show. Tuning in here, paying all attention to it. As Kevin just said in the comments, they're a great conversation starter.
Yeah.
Really cool. What positions everybody goes in. But like I said, send us your list. Send us where you think different people should be, or who's missed and whatnot. So yeah, I'd love to hear it, right? We all love talking racing, and we'll keep it going. Keep track of all the Bracket Life stuff. We got sales going on right now for Valentine's Day. Last chance you can get your spouse something awesome from Bracket Life. Get a fancy couple hats here. Got t-shirts, hoodies.
I show my drink thing, but the last time I showed it, it was faded, and you called me out on it. Oh yeah,
this one's a good one. Here,
yeah,
the fancy one. These are good.
I outside way too much with mine. Apparently,
that's all good.
Problem.
But all right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in, checking us out. 2 weeks, we'll be back do it. We're getting closer. Every one of these we keep doing. Weather was nice today. We're getting closer to racing season.
That's right.
So I'm excited. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks again, Andrew, and everybody else, and see you all later.
Have a good night.
Started the business over 35 years ago. A lot has changed over the years, but one thing still remains the same.
Our passion for fixing cars. With a team of over 12 men and women, they work day in and day out to provide us the best quality service possible.
From light and heavy duty vehicle repairs and maintenance work.
Diagnostics and racing transmissions.
Performance parts and Jeep upgrades.
Automotive detailing.
used car sales,
and towing through our sister company, AC Towing.
Our team has the knowledge and understanding to solve all your vehicle needs while putting your mind at ease.
Experience the Ogilvie difference.
It's worth the drive.